Welcome to the Arrivals Podcast. I'm your host, Merelise Wilson. And today I'm very, very excited to have Ann Morris with me. She is a doula, a birth and postpartum doula, as well as a childbirth educator. And I'm so excited to speak to you about obviously what you do professionally, but first and foremost, your 3 babies and their births.
Yeah. Thank you so much again for having me, Merelise. This is so fun. I'm like obsessed with talking about birth. So, and I'm pretty sure you are too. So this should be a really fun conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Right there with you. How old is your oldest?
Oh my gosh. He's actually going to be celebrating his 8th birthday on the 31st of March. So I don't know when this is coming out, but yeah, he's almost 8.
Oh my goodness. Oh, well, happy early birthday, buddy.
I know. I can't believe it. It's like honestly really hard to believe that I have an almost 8-year-old. So,
and then you have a baby too. So you've got a big spread.
Yeah. So we have an almost 8-year-old, a 3.5-year-old, 2 boys, and then the youngest is a girl. She's 15 months.
Oh,
Yeah.
my youngest is 18 months. So I'm right there with you.
Okay.
It's a hard age.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It's that age where they're just so curious. They get into everything. So you really have to be on your toes at all times because, yeah, she is fast. She's trying to keep up with those 2 older brothers all the time.
I know. Exactly. Oh,
yeah.
All right. So big bro number 1. So what was his birth experience like? And if there's anything too you'd want to share about his pregnancy.
So let's see. I got pregnant in 2017 for the first time. I had no idea about anything. This was before I became a doula, before I became a childbirth educator. And so I did what I feel like most people do. I went on Google, typed in, like OBGYN near me. I was living in New York City at the time. And so, I read some reviews and found one that was close by within walking distance because you walk everywhere in New York. And, just had like a really normal textbook pregnancy. I did all the like routine ultrasounds. I had, all my normal visits and everything was really smooth sailing. I didn't deal with really many symptoms or anything like that. So very, very blessed. I ended up hearing about a childbirth educator that was located in Astoria, Queens, in my 3rd trimester because I was actually working as a teacher at the time. And one of my coworkers told me about this class. And I decided to go because I really wanted to have an unmedicated birth. And so me and my husband went. And it was at that class that I actually heard the word doula for the first time. And my ears kind of perked up and I was like, oh, I think I need one of those for my birth because, I'm trying to go unmedicated. I'm trying to avoid any unnecessary interventions. And so thankfully, I was able to find a doula that late in pregnancy. And she was so wonderful. I ended up going into labor the night before my due date. And so it was around like 10 p.m. I started to feel, a little crampy, nothing too intense right away. But I remember I was like trying to remember the things I had learned in my class. And, I was told, if it's nighttime, like try to stay in bed as long as possible. And so that's what I did. But very quickly, like I realized like I couldn't lay down. Like I was very uncomfortable laying down. And so I was kind of doing like hands and knees in the bed and like, just kind of like trying to change like positions and things like that. And I was on the phone with my doula and she was, kind of like coaching me through some of the contractions. And I'd also heard all the stories of like first time moms taking forever. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to be here a while. So like, just, help me over the phone. And then when I really feel like I need your support, then like, you can join us in person. And so.
Did you have a kind of plan knowing that you wanted to go unmedicated? Well, actually 2 questions. Do you remember at the time why you wanted to go unmedicated, kind of what your goal was there? And then also, did you have a plan for at some point, like the doula would meet you at your house and then the hospital, or just meet you straight at the hospital? Or so 2 questions there.
Yeah. So kind of like I said, like I didn't know too much about birth prior. I just knew that like my personality and like the way that I try to like live my life is like I try to not do anything extra medical wise, like if it's not necessary. And so I just, and going to that class really affirmed that like sometimes the interventions that, care providers can offer to you during labor, like they're not always like helpful or can be necessarily like beneficial to you or your baby, right? Like long term. And
Hmm.
so just like hearing all of that, I just knew like that was kind of like my why of like wanting to go unmedicated. I wasn't trying to prove anything, just like, wanted to see if I could do it, and I knew that
Hmm.
if I needed, medical intervention or pain management, that I could get it, right? I was having the baby in the hospital. Those things would be readily available to me, but like I just knew I wanted to try at least. And
Yeah.
then in regards to having my doula, the plan was for her to come to the apartment first, and then we would go to the hospital together.
Okay.
And so, yeah, but like very soon after, like I realized like there was no way I was going to be able to continue laboring in bed because I was just so uncomfortable. And so I
Hmm.
got up out of bed. It's probably like around like midnight, maybe like 1. And I went over to the shower because I'd heard that like, water is nature's epidural. And so I got in that shower, had my like worship music on. It was just kind of like moving right along, clearly like in active labor at this point because I was starting to need to use like vocalization, but I've never been through labor before, so like I didn't really understand like what that whole process really like looked like or really felt like, because I'd never felt it before either. And so I guess
Hmm.
I have maybe a high-ish pain tolerance. And so I was just rocking and rolling. My husband was there with me, supporting me, and I at one point got out of the shower to like use the restroom, and I now know, almost 8 years later, hindsight is 2020, right? I now know that what I felt when I went to like wipe was my baby's bulging bag of waters.
Wow.
But when I felt that, it completely freaked me out because I literally
Yeah.
like thought it was my baby's head. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, I don't think I can like walk because we lived in like a third floor walk up. And so
Uh-huh.
I was like imagining like all the steps I had to take to like go downstairs and then like get in the car, like walk to the car. Cause again, New York City, the parking's not like
Right.
right outside. You got to like walk to your car. And so I'm just like envisioning this. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way I'm going to be able to do all that. And so I was like, I think we need to call an ambulance. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to like walk myself to the hospital
Yeah.
or walk and drive myself to the hospital. And at this point, I'm probably transitioning. So there's also like that like
Yeah.
heightened like sense of like fight or flight during that time. And so clearly, like, again, in the moment, I did not know that. But my labor was moving really, really fast. And so my husband ends
Yeah.
up calling an ambulance. I ended up taking an ambulance ride for the first time in my life to the
Yeah.
hospital. And yeah, I showed up. They did a cervical check and they were like, all right, you ready to meet your baby? I was like, I guess. Like, I was 10 centimeters dilated, ready to push.
Wow.
And I literally pushed 3 times and he was born.
Wow. Did your
And
water
so,
break while you were pushing or?
um, I think at some point in all of that, I honestly do not remember, like, with that first time around, like, when my water broke. I
Yeah.
just know that, like, at some point it did. But I didn't like, it wasn't like a big sensation or like popping, like feeling or anything like
Right.
that. So I imagine maybe it broke like as I was pushing, or maybe even they did it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I pushed way too hard, way too hard. I had a second-degree tear, and yeah, I should have probably just like waited on my body to feel like the urge to push because I didn't feel the urge to push. I was just told I
Yeah.
was 10 centimeters dilated and like I was ready to go. And so,
Yep.
in all the midst of that, my doula did end up making it to the hospital. She was so wonderful and reassuring. She like put like some like cool washcloths on my, forehead, on my neck and stuff, and was just like so encouraging. Got some amazing pictures of
Mhm.
like us, in those first moments. But yeah, just looking back, like it was just so much faster than I could have imagined, for a first
Yeah.
time mom. Like start to finish, it was probably about 5 hours. So labor, or no, sorry,
Wow.
7 hours, because it started around like 10 and he was born around like 5 or like 5:10 or something like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, I went from 0 to 60 really, really fast. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it
that
sounds
was
like that.
my first son's birth.
Oh my gosh. So you said you pushed 3 times way too hard. What was your recovery like with some of you said you did tear?
Yeah, I had a second
Yeah.
degree tear, which is like the most common tear for like a first time
Hmm.
mom, which I've
Hmm.
learned, now that I'm in this space. That is like the most common tear that I do see. But like I said, I mean, yeah, I just pushed way too hard. I was not like feeling the urge to push.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was kind of unfortunate. But anyway, you live and you learn. My recovery was fine. Yeah, I feel like I experienced like minimal bleeding. I know like I would try to like listen to my body. And so if I started like bleeding more heavily, like on a certain day, I would like try to take it easy. But
Hmm.
yeah, it wasn't too complicated, I feel like. Yeah, looking back.
That's wild for a first time birth for it to happen that quickly. And I mean, I always say, like, if you're trying to go unmedicated, it is usually a blessing if you have a fast labor and birth,
Hmm.
I mean, there can be some downsides to it, of course, as I'm sure you know. But I guess probably for you, for a first time mom who wanted to do it unmedicated or low intervention, you were like, boom, like box checked.
Yeah, I mean, definitely looking back for sure, I was grateful that like it went the way it did. I just feel like birth is always
Hmm.
like so unpredictable. Like you can never
Hmm.
predict how it's going to go, right? But yeah, I definitely was grateful that like it was just, you know, smooth and like it just progressed well and yeah, for the sake of me going unmedicated. Yeah. So, should I jump into my second birth?
Yes, go for it.
Okay. Okay. So there was about 4 years in between my first son being born and my second son being born. And so during that time is actually when I first started my doula practice. So when
Oh.
my first son was about 3 months postpartum, I decided to start like Googling like how to become a birth doula and how to become a postpartum
Mm,
doula because I just had such a great experience like postpartum and just realized like how much support that I had. It was such a blessing. And like, I just knew that like a lot of families like probably don't have that kind of support. And so I was
yeah.
like, I want to be able to like be that for somebody,
Yeah.
in this really like vulnerable and like sacred and like raw time of their life.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I started to pursue that. I ended up taking a postpartum doula training first
Okay.
around, like I said, about 3 months postpartum. And then I took the birth
Wow.
doula training probably about a year later. And so, because I just wanted to be able to serve families, during like the entirety of their experience, right? Through pregnancy and
Hmm.
then birth and then postpartum to give that like continuity of care. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, so I started working with families like right away. And as a doula, like the type of birth that I really loved supporting the most was home birth. And so
Yeah.
I like kind of took like mental notes, of like, oh, like when I get pregnant again, I would like to do a home birth the second time around.
What was it about supporting home births that you were drawn to?
I loved how like intimate it was. I loved the type of care that midwives offer and how they look at you as like a whole person and not just like a patient that's like sick and needs to be fixed, which I
Hmm.
kind of felt that way with like the medical model of care. And, they just view birth in like a physiological sense. I feel like they
Yeah.
tend to trust birth more and just allow it to unfold and they intervene when they need to, but for the most part are typically like pretty hands off and just allow,
Yeah.
God's design to just unfold as it does when it's left alone. And so I just loved that. Yeah. So I knew too, like who I would like to have as my team as well. Yeah, I was like so excited to like go through that journey again, but just with like a different
Yeah.
lens this time around and with different support. And
It's really
so,
cool.
yeah.
I was gonna say, I feel like a lot of times the barrier to home birth for a lot of women is just not knowing what to expect, or fear in some cases, is a broad word, but it's so cool that you got to witness home birth in your capacity as a doula first and really like probably get so comfortable with it before you decided to approach it as the plan for your own birth. So that's a really, I feel like, cool, unique experience that you got to have.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I feel like there's so many like I said, like birth is so unpredictable anyway that like
Hmm.
I knew like with where we lived, like our major hospital was like 5 minutes down the street. Like you could probably actually
Yeah.
get there even faster than that, like if you wanted to. And so I knew that like we had access to that if we needed it. But like I felt really comfortable and confident in the team that I had that like they would
Hmm.
help me make that decision to transfer if like that was needed, in the
Yeah.
moment. I was very open to that. I was never like just like being a doula, because like I know that like things happen in birth and like
Yeah.
you can't like you can plan for birth, but you can't plan the actual thing. And so yeah, I tried to hold my plans like really loosely and like while also
Hmm.
like, hoping for the best, but also having like my plan B and my plan C in the back of my mind if I needed to.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So it was really lovely to walk through my pregnancy with midwives the second time
Mm.
around. My appointments were like 45 minutes to an hour long. I was encouraged to ask questions to understand my body, my physiology, nutrition, like all the things. I learned so much. I was encouraged to like bring my son if I needed to, who was now like 3.5 at the time. And so, yeah, that was really cool. And my husband came to all the appointments, and it was just like a really wonderful, like homey atmosphere.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, with my second, we didn't find out the gender, which is really fun. I knew the gender of my
I love
first.
it.
Yeah.
I'm team surprise, so I love it.
Yes. So fun. So let's see. I was really hoping that I'd go into labor in the evening again, because, obviously we have a child now. And so I was hoping that like he'd be able to be asleep and then, I could, kind of just start rocking and rolling. And so that is what ended up happening. It was the day before. Wait, was it the day before or day after? I can't remember. It was, yeah, around my son's due date. I think he was born on his due date. I'm like, sorry, kind of blanking
Oh,
right now.
cool.
Yeah, so both of them were born like on or like right around their due dates. And
That's so
so,
unusual.
I'll backtrack a little bit. So I remember I went to my like 39-week appointment, and my midwife, like she was like palpating my belly like she always does. And she was like, oh yeah, like your baby's not quite engaged yet, but you could do a few things to like encourage him or her to like get engaged. And so I went home that week and I did all those things that she recommended. And so she said to do like deep squats, high knees. She told me to do like an inversion every day. Do you know what
Hmm.
that is? Like off the couch. Yeah.
Yeah, where you just hang off backwards off the back of the couch or side of the couch.
Yeah, well, not quite backwards, but you're like head down and you're like on
Okay.
your elbows, like supporting you with like your butt up
Okay.
high. And
Got it.
so
Got it.
I did all of those things, and then my chiropractor told me to do like a few other things. So between all of that, once I had my 40-week appointment, she like touched my belly again. She was like, "Oh yeah, this baby's like ready." And at that time,
Locked and loaded.
I actually thought like intuitively that like I was going to be going into labor soon at my 40-week appointment just because I had lost my mucus plug that morning.
Mm.
And so I told her, I was like, "Yeah, I think it could be like sooner rather than later." And I remember she had like a really overdue mom, and she was like, "Okay, just wait until like my overdue mom goes, okay? And then you can go." And I was like, sure."
Mm.
And like, yeah, of course, like I think it was like later that evening. It was when I went into labor. So it was like 7:30. We put our son to sleep. And then I told my husband, I was like, I think it's gonna be soon. So like I'm kind of just gonna start to retreat into our little birth cave. We had the birth pool like all like blown up and ready to go. We just needed to like put the
Yeah.
tarp down and like, top it off with some air. But yeah, I
What made
was
you feel like it was going to be soon? Were you having like just the mucus plug, or was it just a feeling?
No, I was starting to have inconsistent contractions like throughout the day.
Hmm.
And yes, just was very crampy in the morning and then started having inconsistent contractions. And I just like I'm a very like when I'm in labor, like I tend to like really like deny it until like I really can't deny it anymore. And so with me having a home birth, like I was just like, we're cool, like we're good. Like we went out to dinner that day. Like, I wasn't paying attention to it until I really needed to pay attention to it. And so I kind of kept like brushing it off, brushing it off, brushing it off. But I was like, no, like you go put him to bed. I'll go like start to kind of focus on these because they're starting to like need my attention more. And
Yeah.
so it's like my coping skill, I think, or my coping mechanism. It's just denial.
Denial.
Yeah. And so yeah, I would just kind of retreated, went into our room and had my balm, had my worship playlist on, had my Christian hypnobirthing as well. I love that resource. If your listeners aren't familiar with it, you should totally check it out. And yeah, I was just rocking and rolling. I remember like I told my husband at one point, like, I think we have more time, like we're good. I was timing the contractions. And then I remember like the next contraction after that, he was like, I think I'm gonna call Kristen. And I was like, okay, fine. You just call Kristen. And so he like calls our midwife and again, I'm still like kind of in denial, but like it's not his first rodeo, so he knows. I like to call him my moolah, my like man doula. For
I
the
always say
second
that about my husband too. Yes.
yeah. Yeah. For my second and for my third, I didn't have like an actual doula. I had my moolah. So
Oh,
um, and so yeah, he calls the midwife and he was like, Anne's in labor. She was like, okay, like, do you think like we should come? And he was like, he asked me, like, do you think she should come? And I was like, no, not yet. Like, we're good. And I didn't know this, but she had already like started packing her stuff after that. Cause like for second time moms, like
yeah.
tend to go quicker than first time moms. And so
And
I
your
also had a,
first wasn't slow.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And she knew that. And so,
Yeah.
and we also had a birth photographer. So he made all the calls.
Oh,
And about 15 minutes later, he called them back and was like, yeah, I think we're ready for you guys to come. And
yeah.
so, thankfully, they both had like already started getting ready. And so, birth photographer came first, then the birth assistant, and then the midwife. And it was just beautiful. It was such a like holy moment. Like we just had worship going. Everybody was kind of like, worshiping together. We had the birth pool like getting filled up and my when I got into the pool, my water broke within like 5 minutes of me getting in the pool because I think I was finally able to
Yeah.
just like fully relax. And my midwife kind of noticed I was like a little uncomfortable. And so she asked my husband if he would get in with me to kind of like support me from behind, which was really helpful. We hadn't planned on
Yeah.
that, but in the moment it was just like a perfect idea. I'm so glad she suggested that. And so he got like
Was he
behind
hesitant
me.
or was he like, no, let's do it?
No, no, no. He was ready to go. He like just put on
That's
some board
awesome.
shorts and was like there for it. And so yeah, baby was born about 45 minutes after my water broke, in the water.
Wow.
I knew I wanted to take it slower this time around and I wanted to like allow my body to like just do the work. I didn't want to tear, I just knew that like if I slowed that process down and just like really like worked with my body that I could minimize tearing. And so that's what we did. And he was born and let me see, how did we announce the gender that time? He came out and I remember like I saw like his man parts when like the midwife like handed him to me and I was like, "Oh, it's a boy." And I was like so ecstatic and just overwhelmed with joy that he was here. And so, yeah, that was my
Oh,
second birth and it was really beautiful. I loved being in the water. The water was so helpful. I didn't labor
mm,
in water this time around, just because I knew I'd be getting in like the tub and kind of just like wanted to save that for like my last resort. And so I'm so
yeah.
glad I did. And yeah, I didn't tear, thank God. And yeah, he was healthy. I'm so thankful that I had such a great team for my home birth.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd recommend home birth to anybody as long as you're low risk and your baby's
Uh-huh.
healthy. I highly recommend it because it was such a wonderful experience for me.
That's incredible. So, did you end up delivering kind of like sitting up, leaning back in your husband's arms?
Yes. Yep. I
Oh,
tried
that's so
doing like
cool.
hands and knees in the tub, like leaning like over the side, but I was not
Yeah.
comfortable in that position. And like my midwife, like that's when she recommended, like, why don't you turn around and like have your husband like support you from behind? Cause like she knew that that position can sometimes be more comfortable for women. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I ended up having him. And at the very last second, I remember they told me like, cause I think at the last second, cause it's so intense, right? I
Yeah.
started to like fight it. And so I started to like lift my hips up and she was like, if you lift your
Uh-huh.
hips up anymore, you're not going to be able to have your baby in the water. So you got to lower your hips back down. And so I did that. It took every ounce of like self-control to do that. Cause I was,
Yeah.
I was almost trying to like fight it, but then I had to like
Yes.
really just like surrender in those final moments. And then, I like went back down in the water and then he was born. So
Do you feel like you were fighting like the fetal ejection reflex almost, or just like fighting like the push?
I don't know. I always find pushing to be the absolute hardest part. at the very
Oh,
end.
really?
I find contractions to be fine, but then at the end, like the pushing part is when I just regret all of my life's decisions to do it unmedicated. So yeah,
Really?
yeah, I find that end part to be the worst. So yeah, I
I'm
think
the
I was just
reverse.
fighting it.
That's so interesting.
Really? Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I'm
know.
the
It's so
reverse. Oh,
funny.
yeah. Pushing is a relief for me. It's like the laboring. Well, it sounds like you have a pretty fast like labor in general, but for me it's like the unknown of how long labor is going to last and like not knowing how many more of these contractions I'm going to have to like have.
Hmm.
And pushing has always been such a relief for me because it's like the end is in sight. I know that there's only a like, a certain number of more of these I'm going to have to do.
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. That was easier for me, but I totally can see how it'd be different.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I feel like I hear mixed reviews on that. I would say I probably hear more people like on your side of things for sure because you're able to feel like you're doing something like to like help the
Yeah.
process when you're pushing. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just find it to be so intense, like that feeling like
Probably
of like
depends on
that
the size of
pressure.
your baby too.
Yeah, probably.
I've always had pretty like but my babies were like 6'11" and 6'14", so not big by any means. So
Mm.
I imagine if you're pushing out a 10-pound baby or, something in the bigger range, then maybe the pushing is less of a relief.
Mm. Yeah, I can imagine that too. Yeah, for sure.
How big were your babies?
First was 7'1", my second was
Okay.
8'4", and then my third, my
Okay.
daughter, was our smallest, 6'15".
All over the place.
All over the place.
That's so funny. And I feel like you usually don't hear the third being the smallest. I feel like they
I
usually
know.
get progressively bigger.
Yeah, I know. It's so interesting. All of their births were, you know, different in some ways, similar in some ways, but yeah, all of them weighed, pounds different. So, yeah.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
So you had the birth of your dreams. It was amazing. Water birth at home, healthy baby boy, easy recovery. And then you waited a few years and then you got pregnant again?
Yeah, and funny enough, so we've had all three of our kids in different states. So my first son was born in New
Yeah.
York, my second son was born in Florida, and then my third, our daughter, was born here in Georgia, which is where I live now.
Hmm.
And so I started to feel the itch to have another baby when our second son turned like 18 months. It was around the
Okay.
time when we like weaned. And so after that, I was like, okay, I think I could like do this again. And
Yeah.
so I really desired to have another home birth. Unfortunately, here in Georgia, our midwives are not licensed in the state of Georgia yet. We're one of
Hmm.
like 8 or 9 states left where home birth midwives don't or can't hold licensure. So,
Hmm.
because of that, access to home birth midwifery care is not as accessible as it is in other states. In other
Hmm.
states, sometimes home birth midwives can take insurance. Here in Georgia, that's not the case. And so
Yeah.
you have to pay out of pocket. And just like kind of where we were at financially at the time, like just couldn't make it work, unfortunately,
Yeah.
because we do have incredible home birth midwives in the area that I'm in. And so
Yeah.
that was definitely like the model of care that I was really hoping to have this third time around, but just, circumstantially, just wasn't able to make it happen. And so,
Yeah.
as a result, I ended up reaching out to one of the care providers that I really respect in this area. Her name is Carson Reagan, and she is with OB to Me. And I reached out to her and kind of like shared like my situation and also like my hopes for like, my pregnancy and my birth. And
Hmm.
she recommended Providence, which I had heard of and like worked with as a doula, and so I knew like they had a good reputation in this area. Have you heard of them before, Merelise?
I don't think so. It's
Okay.
Providence is the name of the OB practice or the midwife
Yeah,
practice?
it's Providence
Okay.
Women's Care. Yeah,
Okay.
and
Cool.
so Providence is a good option for kind of like women in my position, I guess, because you could birth in the hospital, but you had the option of
Hmm.
having a water birth, which is
Hmm.
like kind of unheard of in the hospital
Yeah,
setting. And
it
so
is.
in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, I can't necessarily have a home birth this time around, but I could have a water birth in the hospital. And so
Hmm.
that to me sounded like a good, happy medium. And so,
Was
um,
did you Did you consider a birth center, or is that also kind of like cost prohibitive?
No, actually, we have an amazing birth center here. I just wasn't able to because unfortunately it was like too late in pregnancy for me to
Oh,
switch. So, yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, the Atlanta Birth Center here in Atlanta is incredible, and they do take
yeah.
insurance. So that is a
Okay.
great option for also women who might be like in a similar predicament.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I ended up going with Providence, and the plan was to have my baby at Wellstar North Fulton, which is in Roswell, Georgia.
Uh-huh.
I live over in Lawrenceville, which is about, it depends on traffic, but it could take you like 40 minutes to get there, give or take.
Okay.
So I knew we were kind of like, you know, playing with fire with this plan, but
Yeah.
I really couldn't think of a better one, honestly. So after kind of going through all my options, I was like, all right, well, this is the best plan we got. So that's what we did. And so, I had a normal pregnancy again, thank God, nothing, no complications. I will say this, I had an ultrasound around 37 weeks, and baby was like posterior. And so I like
Mm.
reached out to some friends and, asked for advice on like things I could do. Obviously, like, I mean, I know things I could do, but I wanted like more, advice
Yeah.
and wisdom from other women about ways
Yeah.
to like get my baby to be in a more optimal position for birth. And so
Yeah.
I did, some of the suggestions like rebozo and
Mm-hmm.
sleeping on my left side and just doing different things like that. And I ended up getting like she would like measure my belly at every appointment, like when they measure your fundal height. And I remember around like
Yeah.
39 weeks, she measured my belly and she was like, "So I think I want to do like another like ultrasound, like maybe next week if you haven't had your baby yet, just because like I am seeing like there hasn't been much of a difference in like the baby's growth between like last week and this week." And in my head, I'm like, okay. I intuitively felt like she was fine. I didn't know it was a
Mm-hmm.
she. Also, we were waiting to find out gender again.
Yeah.
But I intuitively felt like the baby was fine. And so she recommended, I don't know, I think like another scan at like the next appointment or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I remember like in my head, I was like, probably not going to do that, but we'll see how I feel once it gets closer. Well, thankfully, I didn't need to even worry about that because at
Yeah.
39 and 1, my daughter was due right before Christmas. And so we went Christmas caroling on a Friday with some church friends. We walked a lot that day. And
Yeah.
then after that, we went to a friend's daughter's birthday party for her 1-year-old. And so that was really fun. We were in good spirits. It was like Christmas themed. And I got home and laid in bed, and me and my husband, we like pray together every night. And so I remember we like getting ready to pray and my water broke. And I was like, oh, this has never happened before, like, because I wasn't
Yeah.
in labor. And so I was like, oh my goodness. And so, got cleaned up or whatever. Of course, like nothing is packed. We, of course, as a doula, I'm like, I know I should have done this like weeks ago, but like, did it happen? No.
No.
And so we're like frantically, it's like late at night. We're like frantically, like, getting stuff together. Cause like I'm thinking, okay, my water broke. I'm probably going to go into labor. If I go to sleep, my body will just wake me up and I'll be in labor. So we get all of our things kind of organized and situated and finally go to sleep. And I wake up the next morning, no contractions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. I
So
was
how
feeling,
many hours had it been?
it broke around 11. So,
Okay.
maybe like, I don't know. Okay, let's say 12 hours. So, 11
Okay.
a.m. I'm feeling like a little crampy, but like no contractions.
Yeah.
I was starting to like maybe like lose my mucus plug a little bit, but I was like, interesting. Okay, well, we'll just kind of wait and
Mm-hmm.
see. I remember, so my mom, who lives in Florida, she was scheduled to fly in that Tuesday, which was a little bit closer to like my due date because she was going to help us with our two older children when
Mm-hmm.
we had the baby. And so I called her that day and I was like, hey, like, is there any way you could switch your flight to today?
To
Because my
right now.
water my water broke last night, and I think I would have like a lot more peace and maybe my body would just be able to relax if like you were here knowing I have
Yeah.
childcare. And so we had
Totally.
reached out to some church friends just in case things happen, but like I wanted her here. And so
Yeah.
thankfully she was able to switch her flight. She came in. My husband went and like picked her up at the airport, and I was able to just like, go for a walk in our neighborhood. And I was listening to like positive birth story podcasts. If I knew about
Yeah.
yours, I'd be listening to yours, Merelise.
Aw.
It's just really trying to like get into a good headspace and not like start spiraling and freaking
Yeah.
out because I wasn't going into labor. And so I reached out to a midwife friend of mine who lives locally. I wanted to get her like input on the situation. She's a home birth
Hmm.
midwife. I knew if I called my practice, they would tell me to come in right away because
Right.
that's
Right.
typical
Yeah.
standard of care. And so I reached out to somebody who's like, I think a little bit more on like that holistic mindset of things. And
Yeah.
she sent me over this like document, and it was basically like a protocol for like premature rupture of membranes. That's what it's
Hmm.
called.
Yeah.
Um, or like
PROM for
pre-labor,
short.
or like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Or like pre-labor rupture membranes.
Right.
And so she sent it over to me, and I can share it with you. It's actually really a great resource that
Yeah.
I share with a lot of my clients now, because it just really helps you kind of like take ownership of like, your care, like while you're still waiting for like things to progress. And so
Hmm.
I would monitor my temperature every 4 hours. I was taking a high dose vitamin C. I was monitoring baby's movements. I was drinking a lot of water, making sure to stay hydrated.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that was it. Yeah. So I was doing all those things just to like make sure I was like good, monitoring the color of the water. It was clear. So there
Right.
was no like, it wasn't brown, it wasn't green. Like,
No
cause if,
meconium signs.
exactly. I
Hmm.
was, I was aware that like, if that were to be the case, like we should pay closer attention.
Hmm.
And so night 2 rolls around, and in my mind, I'm like, okay, like I know I'm on a time crunch, like with
Mm.
this, because like the longer you wait, the more likely it is that you could contract an infection. And so
Hmm.
obviously, like I wanted to be wise, and I didn't want to be just frivolous and just let myself
Right.
go on forever and ever and ever. I did want to avoid an induction, though. I did want to avoid having to have Pitocin. So I reached out to my chiropractor friend
Yeah.
the next night, right? And I said, hey, like, look, I've tried a lot of things to like go into active labor, and like nothing has worked so far. So if by like tomorrow, maybe like early afternoon, like I'm not in full blown labor, can you come adjust me, please? Because I'd heard about and I'd reached out to, I'd written in a few Facebook groups, and I said, hey, like this is the situation. Does anybody have any advice? And so I got like lists and lists and lists of advice. And the one thing that stuck out to me that like I hadn't really tried yet was getting an adjustment. And so I was
It's
also,
been 24 hours at this point, or 48,
it's
or
been 24 hours.
24.
Yep,
Okay.
24 hours. And so the next morning is Sunday. I wake up. I'm still not in labor. Still crampy though. I'm crampy. I know my body's trying. Like I'm making progress. I know I am, but
Yeah.
I'm still not like having consistent contractions. I was having some, but they were very inconsistent, maybe like 10 minutes every 15 minutes type thing. So we go to church. On the way home from church, we stop by CVS, and I go in because I need like more pads because I'm leaking like crazy.
I'm
And
so impressed you went and left the house when with your water broken. In my experience, it is so messy. I'm very
oh,
impressed.
yeah, I just, like I said, with my first, I try to not like, or with my second, I try to like not focus on it until I really need to focus on it. And so
Yeah.
we go to CVS because I need more pads, but I also am like, let me look and see if they have any castor oil, because I knew that was another
Mm.
option too. And I was willing to like take a little smoothie concoction thing if that's
Yeah.
kind of a last case resort, but I was willing to try it if I needed to. Well, they didn't have any. They were out. And to me, that was like a sign that like, okay, like maybe I won't need it. And so I
Yeah.
come home, and I had already reached out to the chiropractor and said, hey, please, can you come today? I'm not like, things aren't happening still. I think I need you. And so she was like, yes, I have a really busy day, but I can come around like 6 p.m. And I was like, that's fine. That's great. So this is just like a small minor detail, but like so wild. And I feel like I should share it because like God was just so like kind and gracious to us. So my husband, one of his best friends, had passed away like 2 weeks prior. And
Mm.
he was set to be one of the pallbearers in like the funeral. And the funeral was that day, Sunday,
Mm.
for one of his best friends. And it was scheduled for 2 o'clock. And we, like, when my water broke on Friday night, we were like, how is this going to be like possible? Like, what is going on, Lord? Like, we're trying to like just wait this out and see how things progress. But we were like, we just don't know how this is all going to work out. So we just, we just surrendered it and just prayed about it. We're like, Lord, you've got this. So my mom's there, with me and the kids. I'm good. I'm, contracting, but super irregularly. So my husband like goes and like does this amazing like thing to like honor his best friend at 2:00. The chiropractor, like I said, she had a really busy day. Things got like pushed back to like 6:00. She was supposed to come like close to like the time he was going to be gone. But like just circumstantially, she came, like the earliest she could come was like 6. And so he's back by then. He comes home right around that same time. Well, she gives me an adjustment. She's like, oh yeah, your right hip is like all out of whack. Adjust me from like top to bottom, does like reflexology on my feet, adjusts like my hips, my back, my spine, my neck. I'm like tingling all over from like what she does. My like the feet thing was so cool. I don't know if you've ever had that done before.
No.
But immediately, like I tell you, immediately, I go into active labor. Like she leaves at 6:45. I'm like in my shower by like 7. Like I'm not even kidding, like trying to cope. And I just kept saying to myself, oh my gosh, she did it. She did it. She did it.
That's wild.
Wild. And so I had a feeling too, when things shifted, it was going to be quick. And so I'm in the shower. My husband is like frantically like putting our stuff in the car because I'm telling him like we need to go like now. And so he's putting our stuff in the car. My mom is helping put our kids to bed. And I like so desperately like wanted to stay in that shower, but I like forced myself to put clothes on and like go because the water is my happy place in labor.
Yeah.
And so we get in the car and I turn to him and I say, there's no way I'm going to make it to Roswell. Like, there's no way. And he was like, are you sure? And I was like, yes. Like, we need to pivot. We need to go to like the closest one. And so we pivot because my body is starting to bear down. Like, I cannot help it. I cannot control it.
Yeah.
Mind you, it's like 7:45. She left at like 6:45.
That's wild.
It's so wild. And so this is like such a like push for like you to have chiropractic care like in pregnancy and like before labor, even during labor. And so we pivot, we head over to, if you're local, we head over to North Side Gwinnett. It's 10 minutes from our house. And I remember I tell my husband specifically what to say. I tell him to tell them when he walks in, my wife is involuntarily pushing. And he goes in, he's like, my wife's in labor. And they're like, okay, cool.
Yeah. You're like, that's not what you're supposed to say, honey.
And she's pushing. So of course they like send out the cavalry. I'm like wheeled in. Of course, like I worked there as a doula. So I like recognize some of the people. Yeah. So it's like, it's cool. It's like obviously not my plan A at all, but I'm like, I'm comfortable. I'm fine. They put me in a room. I end up getting the hospitalist that's like on call because clearly like they were not expecting me.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and you don't know, if you're in labor, you can literally show up to any labor and delivery. They have to take care of you. It's like the law. So I knew that this was fine. It's just obviously, again, like wasn't my plan A. Right. And so we get in a room and my husband like forgot the birth plan in the car. And so he like runs back to get it, like sprinting. And as he's sprinting back down the hallway, he's sprinting with another person. And it just so happens to be the midwife that's on call because he turns to her and he says, hey, where are you going? And she goes, I'm going to a birth. And he's like, oh, me too. Maybe we're going to the same one. And so they both like walk in together. They told me that after the fact, after my baby was born. But it's just like a funny like side note about the whole drama of it all. It was like,
it feels very symbolic that he forgot the birth plane in the car too, because it's like the birth plane was out the window. Like, you know, it was...
Oh yeah. But actually, I will tell you this. I'm grateful that I had it because they were, of course, asking me tons of questions as I'm like walking in labor. And I'm like, I'm transitioning, pushing, like all the things. Like, I do not want to be listening and focusing on that. Like, where is the birth plan? And that's when he realized, oh my gosh, I forgot it. And so that's why he went and got it so that I could basically, I had a very detailed list of things written out that had all of my information on it to just give them, right? So I was so grateful I had made it, and thought of that ahead of time. So
Yeah.
I was there for 18 minutes before she was born.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a good thing I did not go to Roswell because we would have had a car baby. That would have been a fun
Yes.
story too. But I mean,
Yes.
I wouldn't have ended up getting my water birth. There's no way. There wouldn't have been any time. So yeah,
Yeah.
she was born at 8:18. Chiropractor had left at 6:45. So
Wow.
it was precipitous. It's considered like a precipitous birth.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was amazing. I mean, all things considering, it worked out incredible. The midwife that I had at Northside Gwinnett was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
She was so respectful. She was so encouraging. They don't see births like that very often, where like a mom
Yeah.
comes in and stands up and pushes her baby out while standing up. Like that's literally what
You were
happened.
standing?
I was standing, not
Oh,
intentionally.
wow.
That's just how it happened.
Yeah.
And I remember I like said, "Can somebody please catch my baby?" And she like had just put gloves on and like literally caught her. And we like kind of like scooted back and like went back to the bed. And that's when like we checked gender because we didn't know what we were having. And
Yeah.
my husband says, "It's a boy." I look and I said, "Oh my gosh." I said, "Can we double check?" And like the midwife like lifts up her leg and is like, "That doesn't look like a boy to me." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that doesn't look like a boy to me either." And he had seen like the umbilical cord and like I guess like just
Uh,
in the excitement of it all, said that. And so we
oh
kind
my
of like joke
God.
about it to this day. But yes, we indeed had our girl, and
Oh,
I of course like sobbed, and it was amazing.
that's
Yeah, I laid back
wild.
in bed, had the birth of placenta, explicitly told them I did not want any pitocin, I didn't want
Mm-hmm.
the hep lock, I didn't want any of it, and they were really cool about it. They just I felt very heard by the
Mm-hmm.
team despite like everything that had happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very grateful for the care that I received. I really prayed for, my birth team and that like I would
Yeah.
feel how I did. And so I was so grateful that, you know, God gave me who I needed in the moment.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. That's so our mutual friend, Dr. Rachel, who's been on the podcast, when I was pregnant with my second and I was seeing her, I was overdue, which I tend to be. And I remember I went to go see her and I was so uncomfortable. And she jokingly was like, let me see if I can find the eject button. And, she was like kind of saying it like as a joke, but she was like, that sometimes can happen. And it sounds like that is what happened with you. Like that chiropractor found that eject button
Yeah.
and you're ready to go after that.
Yeah. Did it end up working for you?
Not like that instantaneously. I think I saw her on like a Monday and then I went into labor like 2 or 3 days later. So
Okay.
I'm
Cool.
sure it helped. I'm
For
sure it
sure.
helped. Definitely didn't hurt.
Yeah.
So,
No, for sure. That's awesome.
oh
I
my
love that. I've
gosh.
never heard of that before. The ejection or eject
The eject
button. That's
button.
funny.
Yeah.
I like that. I'll use that.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. So that's absolutely incredible. So then how long did you stay in the hospital with your third? Just like a night and then,
Yeah, it was like 24 hours
yeah.
because we had our two younger kiddos to get back to. So that was the whole thing
Yeah.
though, like with them like not having my records. So I had to like
Yeah.
get my records transferred from like the other provider and stuff like that because they were like, "Who are you? Like, have you had prenatal
Yes.
care?" Like all those questions. So I had to
Yes.
get the records sent over. But yeah, they were really really cool about it. And third time mom, I feel like they're a little more lenient when you've had children.
Hmm.
If you say like, "I want to go home," like as long as you and your baby are doing well, they're typically pretty amicable about that.
Yeah. I've had someone else on the podcast who accidentally had a baby at home and then
Ugh.
they took an ambulance to the hospital and she said that she felt like they were like treating her and her baby like they were aliens from Mars because
Mm,
they hadn't, expected them and they didn't know their history or anything.
yeah.
And it sounds like that was not as much your experience, even though you were an unexpected patient. It sounds like it was a lot more hospitable.
Yeah, I'm so grateful it worked out how it did.
Oh, so going back a little bit, you said, I think it was maybe with your second and then also with your third, that you explicitly told them you didn't want Pitocin.
Yeah.
Can you just kind of like tell the audience a little bit about what your thoughts were behind not wanting Pitocin involved in your births, either during labor to induce and then also post?
Yeah, sure. So I unknowingly, sorry, received Pitocin with my first.
Mm,
So in hospitals across the US, Pitocin is given as expectant management. That's what they call it, after
mm,
your baby is born. And so basically, they're expecting you to bleed more than you should. And so they also give it to help the placenta detach from the uterus. And so, they gave it to me with my first, but I never consented to it. I didn't
mm-hmm,
even know I was given it until a couple months later.
mm-hmm,
And I had really bad postpartum anxiety with my first. And
mm,
so, in the process of becoming a doula, going to births and things like that, I did more research on Pitocin. And there actually are studies that have been done that have linked Pitocin to postpartum anxiety
mm.
and other like mood disorders. And so,
Yeah.
I am just, again, kind of going back to like how I live my life. Like, I'm the type of person that, like, if I don't really need something, I don't want it. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm not against like medicine. Like, of course, if I have a really bad headache, like, and I've tried other things, I'm gonna take medicine, right? But like,
Yeah.
if I don't feel like I really need it, I don't want it. Because
Sure.
I know that those things have, consequences and side
Right.
effects and things like that. And so that was the thought process behind not wanting it if I didn't really, really need it. And so, yeah, with my second, immediately after my son was born at home, they gave me a mixture of herbs, and I took it by
Mm,
mouth. It was like liquid, and it was a mix of placenta ease, is what it's called, and hemholt, and I believe shepherd's purse. And so they give those to you right away after the baby comes out, before the placenta is born,
mm.
and they do that to prevent unnecessary bleeding and also to help the placenta detach. And so I
Yeah.
loved that because it was like, herbs and, no negative side
More
effects or anything
natural.
like that. Yeah. But they did
Yeah.
have those things on hand if I needed them. Like they
Right.
have Pitocin available if you really need it. And so,
Right.
again, same situation with my third. Like I told them, look, like, monitor my bleeding. If my bleeding is bad and like you feel like I could use something, like, I'm open to having a conversation, but like, do
Mm-hmm.
not give it to me unless if like we have that conversation and I feel comfortable with it.
Yeah. I love that. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And then I know because we were talking about this before we got on the phone too, you had your home birth was in Florida. And so the only other people I've spoken to that have had home births have been Georgia residents.
Mm.
And one other thing I wanted to ask you about too is were there any kind of issues with finding a pediatrician to take your son because he was delivered at home?
Good question. Um, no, I didn't have a problem because I was a part of like a pretty close-knit community
Mm-hmm.
where like home birth mamas were, not the norm per se, but like I was in groups where like there were a lot of like-minded other moms. And so
Yeah.
I had reached out to like those kinds of groups while I was pregnant and like asked questions like that and got
Mm-hmm.
recommendations on providers that would take my child once he or she was born. So
Got it.
yeah, no, it
Okay.
wasn't it wasn't very hard. I had to make a few phone calls and like, tell them my plan. And yeah, I just brought him in to the one that I found. It was in Lakewood Ranch. Off the top of my head, I can't remember the name of it right now. Yeah, I can, if like anybody wants to like reach out to me, I'm happy to look into that more.
Yeah. And then shifting gears a little bit into your work as a doula. So you support women in birth and in postpartum currently.
Yes. Yep, sure do. I love it.
Amazing. That's awesome. And then just out of curiosity, how many patients or do you call them patients or do you call them moms? How many do you take a
Clients.
month? Clients? Yeah.
Yeah. I try to aim for like no more than two right now
Okay.
because, I have three kids and I don't work with like a collaborative or a partner or anything like that. It's just me.
Yeah.
And so I feel like my capacity is like two right now, just in the season that I'm in. When I worked with a partner down in Florida, we were taking between 5 and 7 clients a month. So it
Okay.
was a very fun and full season, but we had each other to like be
Yeah.
our, backup. So, yeah, I was able to take on way more than.
That makes a lot of sense. And then as a doula, what are some of the things that you recommend to your moms or your clients that they do during pregnancy to kind of optimize their birth experience?
Yeah, I love that question. So I feel like a lot of the prep work should really be like mental and emotional.
Mm,
Um, and so I feel like you should really spend time like working through any fears that you might have about birth. Um, I really feel like you should, take time to like journal or, pray, talk through things like with your husband, with your doula, with your care provider, listening to like things like positive birth stories, like your
hmm.
podcast. I really feel like your mindset matters a lot more than like most
Yeah.
people realize. I also think that like education is really important. So educate yourself on the birth process and like all of your options that you have, I want you to understand like how labor works, what your choices are, what are the types of interventions that might be offered to you, and what are the benefits and risks of those interventions, right? And also learning about too like how to advocate for yourself. That'll help you really feel more confident when you are in labor instead of feeling like overwhelmed by
Yeah.
everything happening around you. And then I really truly think like your team like matters like a heck of a lot. And so that includes like first and foremost above anything else is your care provider. So like, you know, don't be like me the first time around and choose your care provider just based on like convenience or who accepts your insurance. Like truly, like
Yeah.
I would really encourage you, like if you're listening to this and you're planning to be pregnant in the future, or if you're currently pregnant now, like if you don't feel like 100% of like a heck yes, like with your care provider, like, and you feel like nervous to go to appointments, or if their presence makes you feel any sort of like way that's like not like warm and fuzzy, like I would consider like, thinking about that more. And it's never too late to change care providers. I want you to know
Yeah.
that. Um, because your care provider plays, if not the biggest, like a huge role in like how your birth can unfold. And so also like, keeping in mind too, like your partner or, your doula or your friend or whoever else you're going to be having in the room with you, just make sure
Hmm.
that everyone is like aligned, with like your values and, understands what your preferences are so that you can really feel supported, like no
Yeah.
matter how your birth ends up unfolding. So yeah, those would be like a few things I'd recommend that people
Those
do.
are fantastic recommendations. Yes,
Thanks.
all of that. I was talking about this with someone recently, but birth is so much more mental than I think a lot of people think, especially if you haven't been through it as a first time mom.
Yeah.
But I would say it's like almost more mental than it is physical in some ways.
Mhm.
It's such a journey. And I love what you said about if you have any fears around birth, exploring that
Mhm.
and digging into it because if there's a disconnect, like and I'm sure you've read stories about this too, but there can be situations where women are holding back pushing or the body isn't progressing because they have this kind of like deep-seated fear that they haven't addressed. And
Yep.
so, yeah, I think it's such an important part of your pre-birth process and your pregnancy is like understanding all that, understanding like what your perception of birth is, positive, negative, or otherwise.
Yep.
And yeah, really spending some time sitting in that. This is kind of like 101, but for my audience who doesn't know, how would you describe what a doula does and what your role is in pregnancy and birth supporting women?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I like to say that like a doula is like your pregnancy like roadmap through like pregnancy and then birth and then postpartum, right? Because when you become pregnant, you what do? You go to Google, you go to social media, you Google all the things, you listen to all the influencers and what they say about stuff, but you can kind of just like
Hmm.
simplify all of that if you have a doula, because a doula is
Hmm.
a trained professional who works with families during the pregnancy, birth, and postpartum period, right? And so we are there to essentially educate you and your partner on the process of birth, about different comfort measures to make birth more comfortable, about the different interventions that might be offered to you, and why in certain scenarios you would want those interventions, but then also like maybe what the risks are of those interventions as well. And so really we're there to help make your birth experience just like a positive, overall experience. We're also there to help advocate for you if you're feeling like maybe you're not being heard by your care provider. Maybe they're wanting to do things that you're not wanting to do. And so we're there to help create space for you to feel heard and to feel seen during that process. We're also there to
Mhm.
help you postpartum as well. And so I can come to the home and be there for you to help process your birth experience, to help with breastfeeding struggles, to help with newborn questions. A lot of times, if it's a first time mom, she's never been through any of these things before. Maybe she has a family member like a nephew or a niece that, maybe she's been around a lot, but it's your own, it's different.
Mhm.
And so I'm there to just help answer, any of the questions that might come up during that time. And, I'm also there to help her with, bonding and healing and, yeah, just provide education just at every like turn and twist of the whole journey. So, yeah, that's why like having a doula can be so helpful. Just because you have
Yeah.
somebody in your pocket, literally, you can, text me, call me
Yes.
anytime if things come up, and I'm just there to help make that journey as smooth as possible. So, yeah, and people are welcome to like reach out to me if they have more questions about like what a doula does. But that's kind of like a good like general overview of like my role.
That's such a perfect summary. That is exactly what my doula did for me. I didn't have one with my first, but I did with my second. That's exactly what she did for me. And I think that there is a perception that doulas are just for birth, like just in those hours that you're in labor. And I really want to emphasize everything you just said. Like a very, very little of what you talked about was even like during birth. And I think that truly like there's so much value during the pregnancy process. Like I think a lot of women have anxiety about what's happening to their body, what's happening to their baby. And like if you're at a traditional medical practice, sometimes they don't always a lot of time at appointments to talk about it, or you might be nervous to ask someone, you might be seeing a different provider each time you're there, and your doula can kind of be that consistent sounding board that isn't Dr. Google, that isn't going to, create unnecessary fear, that isn't your mom saying, well, I did it this way, this is what happened to me however many years ago, or friends or whatever, or social media. And that's like something that I found so valuable with my doula, was just being able to be like, hey, this is what I heard at my OB. Am I translating this right? Like, did I understand that correctly? Or like, this weird thing happened in my body today. And, is that normal? Like, it just, all of it. It was just so amazing to have that resource, that consistency, that like safe space to to have it there for me. In pregnancy, of course, in birth, like doulas are so amazing and shine in birth, of course, as advocates and someone who has a lot more experience, obviously, someone who's there solely for you, right? Like they don't have any other births they're attending that day, hopefully. They're really there just for you. And then, yes, in postpartum as well, same thing as in pregnancy. Like you want to avoid, I think, Dr. Google at all costs, because you'll just end up being scared if you start Googling whatever's happening to your body or baby postpartum. And I would text my postpartum doula all the time, so many questions. And it just alleviated so much anxiety and fear for me to have that like resource and that wonderful safe space and that person that I knew I could count on and trusted. So, yes,
I love that you had such a great experience with your doula as well. It's so
I
great.
did. It's interesting too. I haven't spoken about this yet, but I actually switched doulas. I was planning to work with one doula in my second pregnancy and went to meet her in person and kind of do a training, and then I just didn't feel good about it afterwards, and I actually switched. You talked about switching providers. You can count doulas in that too.
Hmm.
Towards the end of my pregnancy, I was nervous I wasn't going to be able to find someone, but I found a different doula, and she was, I guess it wasn't the end of my pregnancy. It was probably halfway through. And she was wonderful. She was incredible. So yeah. So yes, you got to trust your gut, because those are your people.
Yeah, for sure. You have to be able to really feel 100% like comfortable with that person because they're going to be with you in like the
Yeah.
most like transformative, raw, like, situation ever. And so, yeah, you definitely have to feel
Yes.
like 100% about that person for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I always like to close out my episodes by asking my guests to describe birth in 3 words, just whatever comes to mind, like top of mind for you.
Mm, Holy, intense, and transformative.
Those are beautiful. Yes, absolutely. Well, Anne, thank you so, so much for being here today. I really appreciate you spending time with me.
It was so fun. Thank you again, Merelise. I really enjoyed connecting with you today.
Of course. All right. Well, you've been listening to the Arrivals podcast. Until next time.